Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Asmogan. I'm currently live right now here on YouTube, and I am live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I go for a couple hours. On these streams, I like to do these little reactions and stuff if people should request them. Sometimes I'll throw in my own thing that I wanted to check out and I think it would be fun to do a reaction of. But generally speaking, if you guys want me to check anything out, feel free to leave a comment on the videos of the reactions or come to these streams, hang out. I play games. Today I'm playing Warhammer Age of Reckoning or Return to Reckoning, which is the private server. Yeah, all that fun stuff. Hope you guys enjoy the reaction, and also make sure you watch the original video that is reacted to by any reactor first. I like to throw that out there. This is from Mad Season Show. The video will be linked to the description as well as his channel. Please support him. He's an awesome guy, and I certainly appreciate his videos from my days when I was very much a WoW player. Not so much these days, but regardless, wanted to check this out. So let's get underway.
War is everywhere. Faced with certain doom, elves, men, and dwarves have united their forces to form an alliance of order. This is the dawn of a new age. An age where the fate of nations will be forged in the fires of war. This is the age of reckoning.
I think I've seen one of the trail. Well, at least I know I've seen one trailer for Warhammer Online. It's the one where the orc got flung by a catapult and splatted against a wall. Yeah, that was funny. Kenix OST is based. Yes, it is.
The year is 2008. World of
I've
Warcraft
used this
firmly
OST
brought
so
the
many times in
niche
videos.
MMORPG genre into the mainstream. News channels are making documentaries about how it's destroying the youth. People are selling their bodies for gold to buy flying mount training, and Warhammer says, I gotta get in on that. The MMO part, not the...
It's amazing. Yeah, I remember that was. I remember the forums back in the day. Hell, in-game chats about the girl who was trying to sell her body for the flying training. That was. I didn't believe that when I first heard that story. I heard that from a guild mate, and he was like, "Dude, no, it's legit. Look up like the forums. People got screenshots." I'm like, nah, that ain't real. Looked it up. Sure as hell, it fucking was real. I was like, fucking hell, man. That's commitment. You gotta respect the hustle. It's like. My body, flying mounts. Shit, let's do it. Fucking A. But that aside, it's interesting how the media has always been attacking like games, gamers, and like the nerd side of culture. Was she hot though? No. In my opinion, no. No offense to her, but no. But it's interesting how like the media has always kind of like attacked like video games and nerd stuff for years. And it's been a consistent thing throughout. The only thing that's changed is the angle of attack. Like these days now, like back in the day, it was like Christian fundamentalist evangelical types, right? And listen, I am a Christian, but I wouldn't consider myself anywhere near on the like lines of of crazy that a lot of they were. Like I understand there's fiction and reality, and I understand that a good chunk of people, if not most people, understand, you know, reality, fiction. They're separate. But apparently, the media is obsessed with the thought that that's not the case. But yeah, it's just years and years of that crap. Like the Jack Thompson types, right? It's like, oh, you know, the video games will turn all these kids and these young men into gangbangers and killers, and the Jesus can't be found anymore with these. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Fuck off. We know the difference, okay? Like, it's just insane. I'm lucky. My parents totally got it. Like, my whole family played World of Warcraft between, like, you know, Vanilla, TBC, and Wrath. Like, my mom played a human priest of Orc. She liked to do healing. My dad played a human warrior. I played an orc warrior and a human warrior primarily until Wrath of the Lich King. Then I switched to Death Knight. My sister played a Night Elf Rogue. Shocker, I know. You know, like my whole family was into gaming during that era, so I got lucky where my family, despite the fact, you know, my mom was like an uber Christian at times, this particular topic never, she never fell for this shit from like the media. So I got lucky in that regard. But it's still insane that it's still going on today. But instead of it being from like the religion angle and like from evangelical crap, now it's from like, and I'm not gonna bring this up all the time, but like it is like from a hyper left perspective. Now it's like, oh, the gamers are sexist and they're racist and they're neo-fascists or whatever the fuck ever. It's like I'm just hoping at some point in the future we finally get past this line where the media gives up on trying to demonize like video games and Dungeons and Dragons, and it just stops at some point. I'm really hoping we get to that. But anyway, apologies.
Prostitution for in-game currency's part. Warhammer Fantasy was created by Games Workshop in 1983 and is thought by many to be one of the most, if not the most, influential tabletop miniature games of all time.
Oh, hell yeah.
The universe features...
I would argue tabletop-wise, absolutely.
More imbued with a dark and gritty tone where the world is constantly
Granted, I'm biased.
on the edge of apocalyptic chaos. It's this sense of war and destruction in this fantasy setting that has made the IP wildly appealing, and considering Blizzard's success within the MMO genre, it was only inevitable that Warhammer would try their hand. However, Climax Studios, the first studio to try making this adaptation, stumbled, having issues with scaling their vision and integrating the sheer amount of lore into an online framework, leading to its eventual cancellation. When Mythic Entertainment took over, however, they inherited not just the Warhammer IP, but also the high expectations from its fans. But this time, they had experience under their belt.
I will say that, like, I've never been a game developer, but I did take a college course in like 3D animation and graphics design. And I'll tell you, just for like the homework assignments, like the stress sometimes are like, oh, okay, we want you to like have these like certain like animation stuff, and you have to make everything from the ground up. You can't use any pre-made assets, and we have to use the specific softwares and like the deadlines they would give you for the project to make it look as good. As fun as those was, I can only imagine the stress of trying to do a full-blown video game just from the 3D angle. Like I don't even know how to do programming. But from 3D, from the 3D art aspect, that I'm familiar with, and like texture applications and the animations. God, that would like the stress of that alone is already a lot. But then add on top of it, you have an IP attached to it as legendary as Warhammer. Like Warhammer has such zealous people behind it. Speaking as one of them. So yeah, you fuck up bad. Like they will never let you live it down. Yeah, it's just bad. I will stress this though. I would argue that gamers like throughout time though have been pretty good at aiming. Granted, there are always gonna be the nerds or the super fans that take the rage out on like even the low run like 3D animators and 3D designers. But I would argue most of like the nerds get that it's not the devs most of the time. It's usually the publishers pushing the game out before it's ready. Most of the time. Certain things you can absolutely blame the devs for. Like a good example of that would be Dragon Age Veilguard, right? That game from its inception on the dev level was shit. Let's not even talk about like the publishing side. But in this case, back in this era, it wasn't the devs. It was like the deadline and the stress and the anxiety of like what they had to do. And I would argue most gamers get that to an extent. At least I'm hoping I'm right when I say the most part. At the very least, a few. Come on. But anyway, I will say he's about to talk about Dark Age of Camelot. I didn't know. I never played Dark Age of Camelot. I think that was before my time. I could be wrong. I don't remember what era specifically Dark Age of Camelot was, but I do remember hearing that name at one point.
Well, having developed the Dark Age of Camelot, which had successfully merged PvE with its RVR system, Mythic was seen as the perfect studio.
Yeah, you were checking it. It's the devs a lot of time now.
Brutal, war-torn world to life. In a time where the MMO genre had gained newfound popularity, people's expectations were soaring into the heavens. releasing in 2008 with a stellar launch of 1.2 million sales.
Oh, that's pretty
Many
good.
thought that, much like World of Warcraft, their MMO release was to be their crown jewel.
Hello, Havoc.
But
Welcome to the stream.
as it would turn out, these numbers would only slowly dwindle until its eventual demise in 2013. Today, we're going to analyze the rise and fall of Warhammer Online, The Age of Reckoning.
Yeah, I am curious why it failed. Because, you know, the little bit I've played to the private server so far, it's been a smooth experience. You know, the gameplay feels smooth. Chapter 1, Origins.
Mythic Entertainment was founded in 1995 by Mark Jacobs and Rob Denton as Interworld Productions. Initially, the company focused on creating multi-user dungeons, or mods, which were the text-based predecessors to the MMORPGs. And in 1997, the company rebranded itself to Mythic Entertainment. They would release several titles during this time, but their most defining moment came in 2001 with the release of The Dark Age of Camelot, an MMO inspired by European mythology and featuring a 3-realm system, offering a unique take on player versus player combat. It would be well received both by critics and players, particularly
Hey,
for its
9.1,
innovative
that's
mass combat
pretty
realm
good.
versus realm, or RVR system. More importantly, its success would put Mythic Entertainment on
Wait,
the
they
map
had sieges
as
in
a
that?
major player in the MMORPG space.
How old, like, I don't know if anyone here, like, I'm totally unfamiliar with Dark Age of Camelot, but how old is that MMO? It looks old. Like, it looks like Guild Wars 1 kind of era. Massive mismanagement and Bioware killed it, cannibalized the devs for SWTOR. Really? So wait, so SWTOR's development took away from Warhammer Age of Reckoning? Or wait, are we talking about something else now? Sorry. It almost threatened WoW, funny enough. Really? Dark Camelot almost threatened WoW? I don't know, like, just in concept, it's hard for me to imagine. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm curious about it just from the name, but it's like Camelot, you know, like old school fantasy of European folklore. I don't know. Personally, I think that's a bit niche, isn't it? Well, I say that, you know, fucking, I'm nowhere to talk, I guess. War also has sieges. We're definitely gonna have to experience that with the PvP then. EA merged the companies. Warhammer Online threatened WoW. Well, I know that at one point, Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning was referred to as a WoW killer, but and keep in mind, I don't like WoW anymore, so this isn't like a biased perspective here, but this is just my experience with it as a former WoW player. Every time an MMO has come into the scene, whether they gave themselves that label or were given it by a fan base, it seems like it's as cursed as a Sonichu medallion. So, yeah, it almost never works out that way. Like, quite often when a game comes out that has like the WoW killer title onto it, it seems like it's cursed. Like something along the lines of like the development, like it gets screwed up. And with Warhammer Online, especially given it came out around the same time as Wrath, I don't think it ever had the chance to be a WoW killer. And again, I'm not being biased as a WoW fanboy. Just at that time, that was WoW's best expansion, narratively and thematically. You know, I'll tell you this: if Warhammer Online had come out probably during the same time as Vanilla, with all the same systems, aesthetic, and all that, or even if it had come out just during Cataclysm, I think it would have had a better chance of beating WoW. But it had the bad luck of coming out during the era of WoW's greatest expansion. So I don't think it ever had the chance to do that. Maybe threaten their bottom line for damn sure, but as a whole, or taking top spot, that's bold. During TBC. Oh, it came out during TBC. Okay, I thought it came out during... Okay, I thought I looked it up. I thought it was the same year as... All right, my bad. Never mind. So if it came out during TBC, it definitely had more of a chance to be a threat then. Not that TBC was bad, mind you. TBC was awesome. But it like as awesome or as like iconic and as like huge as Wrath. Not quite. So yeah, but yeah, if it came out during TBC, if it came in swinging, it definitely had a chance to, at the very least, come up on WoW's heels. That's for sure. War was never a threat. WoW was already too big. Rift made a dent. Rift. Wait, Rift wasn't. Well, we're gonna get off topic way bad with that. Social never was a threat because of the botched launch. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole in itself. But yeah. So, but anyway, moving on. We're gonna get into a huge rabbit hole here. If I don't get this video's gonna be long enough.
And it would often be compared to other popular MMOs such as EverQuest or Ultima Online. It would eventually peak at over 250,000 subscribers at its height, which was quite a lot at the time. So when it was learned that they were tasked with bringing in such a huge IP into the genre, there was much excitement. Almost as much excitement that you'll get by becoming a pro coder by using the learning tool.
God damn it.
Dev. Much like life itself, learning
Punched in the face.
can sometimes feel
Punched
like
right in the
endless
face
grind.
with an ad.
And as much as the world first 300 fishermen, world first Bloodcell Admiral, rank 14, Monotonous Adonis loves that. What if I were to tell you that there's a way to make it as fun and as engaging as a video game? With boot.dev, you can learn back-end web development in Python and Go while feeling like you're leveling up in an RPG. It's designed to keep you engaged using learning techniques from game design. You're not just reading theory, you're actually writing code from day one and solving challenges, shipping projects. Plus, it's self-paced, so you can learn when it suits you. As you complete challenges, you learn XP, levels.
I mean, credit to boot.dev a little bit there. If they've designed their whole training program like and make it feel like leveling up, that actually does help people like learn stuff, right? Is like those little pats on the back that like you feel like you turn it into a game. I find that the best way to learn for a lot of people is when you do make it more of like a fun thing. So credit to them for doing that. But yeah.
Achievements.
Raid Shadow
preparing
Legends.
for a real-world career in back-end development. And if you ever get stuck, their AI guide, Boots, is there to walk you through any tricky concepts and asking you questions to deepen your understanding. And there's also an active Discord community there as well to help you out. Boot.dev really focuses on fundamentals and helping you build solid skills for your tech career. And according to Stack Overflow, back-end developers in the US earn a median salary of over $100,000 a year. So you can pay as much money as you want to not play your favorite game. If you're interested, click the link in the description.
Fucking WoW
and
token.
use
Don't
my
even get me
code
started
to
on the
get
WoW token.
25% off your
Fuck.
first month or even your
Would you like to
entire
buy
first year
gold?
if you go for the annual plan.
Let's destroy the in-game economy.
In 2006, during its development, they would be acquired by Electronic Arts as part
Welcome
of
to
a
stream,
move to
the Real
strengthen their
Guardian. Don't
presence
really care
within
about
the
AI.
MMO market.
Fair enough.
And though this would bring many benefits, the biggest being funding for the project, it was accompanied by a looming shadow of destructive corporate influence, as EA at this point had been responsible for the acquisition and liquidation of many such game studios.
Right, yeah. I keep forgetting that EA used to be like the universally agreed upon as the worst studio. Sorry, not studio, publisher. They used to be the worst. It's funny how Blizzard at this era was known as one of the best.
Pieces were in play, and development.
It's kind of
continued.
interesting how things have
The
changed.
bones of the
I mean,
game
EA
would
are
be
still
standard
hated,
of
but
most MMOs in this mid-2000s era.
Blizzard are kind of up there
featuring
with
a
them on the
diverse
hatred
array of
market.
Character classes, each designed to fit within the broader context of Warhammer fantasy. Each were divided amongst their own racial lines, with each race having distinct classes that reflected their role within the Warhammer lore. For instance, the Empire and the Empire only could have classes like Witch Hunter and Bright Wizard, while the Greenskins featured classes like the Black Orc or the Squig Herder. Each of these pairings had melee and ranged DPS classes, tank, healing, or support that mimicked each other's roles, but yet still had variations in playstyle, aesthetics, and also lore. It was designed to maintain symmetry
You remember
between
Ultima
the two
Online?
factions.
I remember.
ensuring that every
I
class had
remember.
some sort
I
of
never
a
played Ultima
counterpart
Online, but I
on the
remember
opposite
Ultima
side,
Online.
in order to maintain some measure of balance, but at the same time, adding variety and uniqueness. They would also, of course, rely heavily upon one of their greatest.
I will say this, having now made a character in Warhammer Online, I will say I do kind of like their approach to character creation just a little bit more than some other MMO. This is gonna sound strange, but this is another case of like the little things like improve experience. I like that in the character creator, they have like the actual like standing representative races right in front of you of like the different factions that you can pick, and they're standing right there. So it's the way they approach like actually presenting not only the factions to you, but the character creator from there, and like selecting, okay, which faction do you want? Okay, which race do you want? You can just click on them right there, and then you can go to the character creator and switch between the classes. Little things like that feel more immersive in your choice than I think like WoW has been doing it over the years. With WoW, it's very much menued. It's very like straightforward. It's very like, all right, let's get you through this and get you to the game, while still giving you options. To be fair, but I don't. It's very much still like, yeah, I'm playing a video game right now as you like create your character. It's all menus, it's all UI, and yeah, you have your character right there to see like, previews of stuff. Body 1, body 2, yeah. So while, albeit I will say Warhammer Online has pretty lackluster like creator in. Granted, I've only made it orc so far, so maybe with like the more human looking characters, they have more options that actually look more varied. But having made a orc so far, the actual like changes you can make on them, the war paint and all that, it's very lackluster in that regard. WoW definitely, even back at this period of time, beat them in terms of like aesthetic options. But it's that presentation of the character creation. It's like, okay, we're gonna zoom you in. It's very thematic. Both factions are standing opposed to each other with their banners ready to go, with all three of the races on both factions presenting themselves, and you can just click on them from there, and then it like zooms around and like moves you to like a different view. That felt more cinematic and more immersive than menus, click option, button here, button here, button here. The uniqueness of the classes and races is neat, especially since other MMOs, WoW, have completely abandoned racial distinctions for classes. Yeah. And I will say, well, granted, I haven't played the latest expansion stuff of WoW, so I don't know if that's changed, but I did dip my toes into Dragonflight for like a month just to give it a shot. Spoilers, it didn't make up for anything. But when I dip my toes into that, I will say the character aesthetically, there's still a difference. But yeah, I get what you mean, like on a more fundamental level. You definitely don't feel the racial identity anymore in World of Warcraft. It is very unfortunate. I mean, as it is, I think a huge thing that helped kill that feeling and that vibe is the options of where you can start in World of Warcraft. Because now you can start in like the the expansion zone of like your race. Like you can, let's say you're Night Elf, you can start out in Dalaran, not Dalaran, fucking Teldrassil. Is it still Teldrassil? Fuck. Point is, you can start in the Night Elf starting zone, and you can get like that vibe of being amongst the Night Elves, and get a vibe for their culture's aesthetic and like that vibe. If you start in humans, you start in Elwyn Forest. You start with dwarves. You start with the Ironforge and Dunmorog. You know, but now there's another option that they actually, I won't say the default you to, but they definitely, I would say the game gives the vibe that it wants you to pick that choice. Is they have that all-in-one intro where you're just like, oh, you're a member of the Alliance, the conglomerate community of the Alliance, and you have the exact same like narrative experience of going on that island and doing those same exact like quest stuff. Like that, if you do that, that kind of kills, I think, a lot of that unique racial identity that starting in like your race's starting zone had. So that's certainly something I don't like about modern WoW. Granted, it's an option. You can still do the racial zone, but my thing is like, what if you're a new player and you're like, oh, well, the game highlights this one first, and this is like supposed to be like the newer intro to the game, so it's better, right? I definitely think for like your individual race identity within the world, it is pretty bad, because Yeah, like the identity is killed if you do that. If you do that particular quest line on that island. But let's go.
Strengths: an IP with decades of lore and history under its belt. The game's environments, character designs, storylines were all heavily inspired by Games Workshop's iconic tabletop universe, providing players with an authentic Warhammer experience.
For the most part.
Similar in a lot of ways to World of Warcraft, each race had their own unique starting zone, which reflected the aesthetics and culture of that race.
Which helps
Empire's
reinforce the
starting
identity
zone
of that
was a
race,
grim
which in
and
modern WoW
war-torn
really isn't much of a thing.
landscape filled with crumbling
Sorry,
castles
I really
and
shouldn't be bringing up
corrupt
WoW all that
villages
much
and
about
chaos
this.
invaders.
But that's
While in contrast, the
Yeah.
Greenskin starting area was a barren wasteland where orc warbands clashed with dwarven armies in an eternal struggle for dominance.
And it's been dogging fun so far. I got to ride a catapult right into the dwarven fortress, and I got to cut down stunties left and right. It was so much fun. Gawking more could be shining upon me.
These environments were rich in detail and provided a sense of immersion that made players feel like they were part of this ongoing war. Many of the quests were inspired by famous battles or events from the IP's history. Players could participate in quests that pitted them against iconic enemies such as the Skaven or the Chaos Gods, while the game's main storyline focused on the eternal struggle between the Order and
I'd imagine
destruction,
if
with each faction
Warhammer
vying for
Online
control of
had
the
lived
world.
longer,
And though World of Warcraft
they would have
had
added
become
more
wildly
races to play.
popular
It would have
at
been
the
cool
time,
to play
the
as
cyclical
Skaven in a
development,
different
they
expansion
knew that
of
competing
Warhammer
with it
Online.
required a distinct vision, rather than attempt a straight replica
Squeak!
of World of Warcraft's blend of PvE and PvP combat. They wanted to create a game that instead emphasized large-scale warfare, which they believed was truer to the Warhammer universe. To this end, one of the game's primary selling points, much like the Dark Age of Camelot, became its realm versus realm combat, which was a system where players could engage in large-scale PvP battles to capture territory.
Which
for their
is a strong
faction,
selling
complete
point
with
for
its
a lot
own
of people, I
progression
think.
system. The developers wanted the players to feel like they were part of this epic ongoing war that extended beyond individual battles and quests. It was framed as an integral part of the game's storyline, with the ultimate goal being the sacking of enemy capitals, which would be possible if a faction dominated enough zones. Drawing inspiration from the AOC, it divided the game world into 3 conflict zones, one for each race: Empire versus Chaos, High Elves versus Dark Elves, and Dwarves versus Greenskins. In each zone, players would engage in battles to control strategic points with
This does bring up like a big point with like MMOs though, specifically MMORPGs. I think it can work in like different types of MMOs, but specifically MMORPGs with tab targeting and in this kind of design. This has been a debate for a long time, I think, but PvP centric or focused MMORPGs. There's a decent number of people who think that they're doomed to fail, because I've heard that a lot with what's it called? There's a crowdfunded MMO being in the works. Ashes of Creation, I think it is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a big talk in like, are like PvP centric MMOs kind of doomed to fail because there's a lot of problems with that design. Because I know the part of the arguments is like if you don't have the ability to opt out of the PvP, that a lot of people have a problem with that, and I can see that. I certainly can, and obviously the answer to that would be, hey, well, if you don't like PvP, then don't play this MMO. But then that means the MMO is going to lose out on potential members of the community and potential, subscribers to keep the game alive and keep it funded. So it is a mixed bag, I'd have to say. Me personally, this is a little bit of my old school WoW bias, but I think the way WoW did it was pretty good. They had servers where you could do PvE and PvE focused stuff, and then obviously you could still do battlegrounds in those. You could still do a form of PvP in those servers, but open world PvP you couldn't do. And then they had PvP servers where you could do like the large scale PvP in the open world. and you could switch between them as like depending on your mood. It's like, okay, am I going to be in a mood where I can, deal with being ganked and deal with getting like killed randomly in the open world as I'm leveling up and trying to get ready so I could participate in those fun big open world PvP sections. It's a bit of a debate, I think. But I think that was the best form of PvP is that option. It's like, okay, you have a whole server, but if you commit to that server, you're stuck with it. You don't have a choice. You nut up or shut up. But you can still have characters in other servers if you still wanted to play WoW, but you didn't want to put up with ganking and stuff like that. I thought that was the best form of it. That's my bias, though. The RVR has campaign has sieges, by the way. Yeah, and I think the sieges would be fun. Like that'd be fun to do, especially if you can actually see walls crumble apart. Though that'd be fun. The problem with adding more races is that by lore there is already zero reason for Dark Elves to join with Chaos and Greenskins. Correct, and there's minimal reason that Greenskins would join with both of them as well. Greenskins are known to mercenary themselves out to other factions, but at any point on a whim, effectively, they can turn on their allies. So yeah, the lore-wise, they're already making concessions just to make that a separate faction from the the alliance equivalent here, the order, the forces of order. So they're already making concessions there. Is it that much more of a concession to add races on both sides? I would say not really at that point. If you've already made enough concessions to say, hey, the Dark Elves and the Greenskins and Chaos would all work together, at that point, it's like, okay, just start at, like, as long as the faction barely makes sense to work with these other ones, then just roll with it. Then again, they could also add a third faction, although that itself comes with a debate, I suppose. But yeah, the overall gist of like my thing is I don't necessarily think a PvP centric MMO is doomed to fail, but it's a very fine line that they have to manage, if that makes sense. Because you definitely got to put in safeguards to an extent. I guess the easiest way to do that is like have like starting zones up to a certain level, kind of restricted, or what's the term? Instanced out of being accessed by high level players. I think that's the easiest way to handle it, at least from the start, and that way let the players get their foot on the ground and then get used to it, and then they can jump into the open world PvP after they get out of the starting zone. But that's just kind of one thing I'm throwing out there. I do think it can work. I'm actually hopeful that, again, I think it's called Ashes as Creation. I could be wrong. But I am hopeful like MMOs like that do have a place and do have a decent amount of potential success awaiting them. I don't like the idea that they're doomed. And I don't think they're doomed. I just think it is a very hard and fine line system you have to work out before you go in. Havoc says, I think PvP MMO could certainly work. PlanetSide and Eve are very PvP focused. True. PlanetSide, specifically PlanetSide 2, though, that's not an MMORPG. With like a leveling system. There is leveling, and don't get me wrong, there is like unlocking gear and stuff like that, but it's not the same. It's more, it's a Battlefield style game, right? Where like open world tanks and stuff like that. Like in terms of like your starting equipment versus the guy who's played like tens of thousands of hours, you still can beat him, right? Like he doesn't have like hardline numbers that are better than you, like strengths, attributes, dexterity, intelligence. Like it comes down to skill and practice, really. And obviously, it's a little bit harder to beat a high level player in PlanetSide 2 with starting gear, but you still can. Meanwhile, if you go up as a level 1 in like World of Warcraft, for example, back in TBC versus a level 60 plus, you'd die. Like you'd have zero chance to beat that guy as a level 1. So that's like the finite difference here. And Eve, I don't know too much about Eve, so I can't counteract or confront that one. But yeah, I do think PvP MMORPGs with open world centric PvP can work. It's just a fine line system. All right, let's continue.
Victories contributing to the overall war effort, and as one faction gained dominance in multiple zones, they could eventually lay siege to the enemy's capital city, and the sieges themselves were monumental events involving dozens or even hundreds of players on each side. Defenders had to repel waves of attackers, protecting key structures and NPCs, while attackers aimed to break through city defenses and reach the final bosses. In theory, it would create a deeply engaging, large-scale PvP environment. It would foster a sense of teamwork, where the whole server was encouraged to band together in defense or offense against enemy factions. But theory is one thing. Creating such a system was fraught with challenges, particularly in balancing ambition with accessibility. Games like World of Warcraft at this point catered to casual gamers, and Mythic had to decide how much to cater to the hardcore PvP audience, while also ensuring that the more casual players felt included. But for now, exactly how they would do that would remain to be a mystery. Nonetheless, this RVR system would become their crown jewel, and they had seemed to stake their entire game on it. Another innovative feature that set it apart from other MMOs at the time was the public quest system, which allowed players to engage in these large open-world events without needing to form groups. They had multiple stages, each building in difficulty, and often culminating in a climactic battle or boss fight. For example, the first stage might require players to kill a number of weaker enemies, and the second maybe would be a mini-boss or protecting another NPC, whereas the final stage would be this very large-scale boss fight that required coordination from all participants. And at the end, loot rewards were distributed based on each player's contribution to the quest. The system was quite unique at the time, and it would promote a cooperative experience while...
I would say, because I would say definitively, this definitely came out. Trying to remember like when the original Final Fantasy XIV Online came out. I'm pretty sure that that came out in 2012, right? Or was that A Realm Reborn's re-release? Shoot, I can't remember. Well, I'm just gonna run under the assumption that the original release for Final FF14 was 2012, and if this was back in the TBC era, well, we were talking about development right here, but we talk about the TBC era. I would argue if, at least to some extent, potentially Final Fantasy XIV's open their events or their fates system that they have was possibly, maybe not directly, but tangentially related to this idea, like the public questing, because that's essentially what a fate is. Granted, a lot of the fates are more simplistic, like quests, like, oh, kill this enemy or collect this item, that kind of thing. They usually, very few fates are in like numerous stages, right? But I would argue like Final Fantasy XIV, whether indirectly or not, OGFF14 was 2010, so close. Ooh, then they probably, and I can't say as definitively they were necessarily inspired by that. Then they might have been. But yeah, fates. So that's what I'd like to compare, like public quests or like the public event quests in Warhammer Online, because I've experienced 2 of them so far, and they were fun, and they are a unique mechanic, but they're essentially similar to Fates. OGF 14 was 2010, so close. Transmog also came out with this game. Really? This game was Transmogs? Hmm. I have a joke with, I have a joke there. I'm not going to say that.
While reducing the need for solo grinding or questing and creating a dynamic.
I'll say the PG version of it. WoW picked this. WoW picked at the corpse of Warhammer Online. Then it was like, we'll take that, and fuck off, and then pissed on the grave.
PvE experience. Another key innovation was the Tome of Knowledge, which was an in-game encyclopedia of sorts that tracked the player's progress and achievements while also serving as a lore compendium. It offered a unique mix of storytelling and gameplay, and rewarding players for exploring the world and completing hidden objectives. Players who delved deep into the tome could unlock cosmetic rewards and titles, and additional lore snippets, adding depth to the world. Though it may seem pretty run-of-the-mill by today's standards, this would be one of the first achievement-based systems to be released within the genre.
True, I get, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Because I looked at the compendium today, and yeah, my reaction was kind of, just par for the
Despite
course.
these
But
innovations, Warhammer
that's fair to
could
point
not
out. Yeah,
escape
at that time that would have
comparisons
been
to World of
newer.
Warcraft. Released 4 years after Blizzard's hit, it was often labeled to be the WoW killer. Even though
Never
Mythic
do
and
this, by
EA
the way. Never do this, okay? Potential MMORPG devs out there, or if you are one right now, don't do this. It's like putting on the Sonichu medallion. Don't fucking do it. Do not label your potential MMORPG as a WoW killer. If it ends up killing WoW, let it do it naturally, but don't label it that. It's like it's a curse, I'm telling you. Every single MMO that has labeled itself a WoW killer has died. Not just like failed, they've died, or they've gone free to play, or they've gone into basically like abandonment mode where the servers are being maintained, but that's it. Don't fucking do this. I swear to God.
distanced themselves from such claims. However, the comparisons were inevitable.
Well,
given
thing
that
is,
both games had
I love that comment too. What if I declare WoW as the WoW killer? Ironically, that is the only WoW killer that will WoW kill. Say that 5 times fast. But that is the only thing that'll actually kill WoW is WoW itself. That is all that at this point, with how ingrained and how addicted hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are to World of Warcraft, the only thing that will kill World of Warcraft is World of Warcraft and Blizzard. Don't label other MMOs a WoW killer. It's like putting on that damn medallion. You will be cursed.
at a high fantasy setting with similar core mechanics such as questing, leveling, and faction-based PvP. But the differences were significant. While World of Warcraft excelled in offering a balanced blend of PvE and PvP, Warhammer more leaned heavily into the PvP content, particularly with its RVR system. As with any MMO project, Warhammer's development encountered numerous challenges and delays. Initially slated for release in 2007, the game faced several pushbacks due to various technical and design hurdles. One of the biggest obstacles was the complexity of the RVR system. Balancing large-scale PvP with compelling PvE content proved to be more difficult than the developers anticipated, as this massively complex RVR system dominated most of their focus. Additionally, the team struggled with server stability and technical issues during testing phases. These massive battles, which were meant to be the hallmark of the game, caused significant lag and issues, leading to performance problems that would haunt the game even post-launch. When trying to pin down exactly what made World of Warcraft so popular, some will mention its casual-friendly nature, others its endgame systems, some simply timing. But what's often overlooked,
what I would say, is all of the above. What made WoW so popular is all of it. I think a lot of the time people say oh, it's this thing or this thing or this thing. It's all of it. It's the web of it. It's not just one. It's not one strand of the web. It's every strand that held it together. You take out any of those strands and that web is going to be infinitely weaker, right? That's why WoW was how it was. It's not one thing or one major thing or this thing above everything else. I mean, there's a couple of things you could certainly say were more of a contributor to WoW's success, but honestly, it's all of the above. It's literally all of the above. It's not just one thing. WoW had fun, engaging PvP. It had awesome quest lines and fun and engaging gameplay. It had a very smooth character creator, very immersive zones and beautiful vistas, engaging systems. It did, if any one category had been lacking, WoW would not have been the giant that it has become. It's lightning in a bottle in many ways. So that's one thing I would hazard people not to get stuck into mentally, is when you talk about World of Warcraft and talk about how it got to the top of the line. Don't try and narrow it down, because that's your first mistake. It's not any one system that put WoW at the top. It was all the systems together. Personal opinion.
are the basics. The gameplay felt smooth, natural, and fun. When you pressed the button, an ability came out, and it simply felt good. This was the result of a lot of polish over a 5-year development cycle that Warhammer simply lacked. Even on high-end systems, it felt clunky and unnatural, and it was something that was immediately
And the
noticeable
frame
to
rate of
anybody
this
coming
this
from
footage
the
is
world of
rough.
Azeroth. Though it had more than enough innovation, what it lacked was this foundation for which the players got
Oh, you
to
filthy bastard! You rolled
experience it.
need.
It also
You didn't even
suffered
look at the
major
item. You didn't even.
balance issues. Although
He's just
the
like,
classes
item,
were
I will
mirrored
roll
in
need anyway.
archetype, they still varied and held unique gameplay styles, and while this would be advantageous in providing variety between the two factions, as well as identity, it would also create balance issues where some mirror classes were vastly superior to the opposite faction's counterpart.
Warhammer!
Despite these setbacks, release day drew closer and closer, and facing pressure from their publisher, EA, the development team made their final push to release a game that, at the very least, is
I only ever
playable,
went to like one
if
midnight
not
release. I think it was for one of the
hamstrung.
Halo games.
After a 3-year development cycle, Warhammer Online: The Age of Reckoning finally launched in
like the
September
conventions and stuff
of
like that, like-
2008. To great
It
anticipation
would be so
and
fun to go to one of those.
expectations soaring
Back in the
into
heyday, I guess.
heavens,
These days, not
EA
so
and
much.
Mythic spared no expense in their marketing campaign, which highlighted the game's key selling points: massive PvP battles, immersive lore, and a focus on faction-based warfare. The tagline, "War is Everywhere," encapsulated the game's emphasis on conflict and RVR combat. This marketing campaign played heavily
Whoa, what
on the
was that?
Warhammer IP, drawing in not just MMO fans, but also diehard Warhammer fans who had long
Miniwargaming.com.
awaited a faithful video game adaptation of the beloved tabletop universe. Trailers showcased epic battles between armies of order and destruction, and promotional materials emphasized the game's focus on war and conquest and grittiness. Initial reviews were generally positive. Many praised the game's innovative public quest system, which was a breath of fresh air at the time, as well as its RVR mechanics and the faithful recreation of the Warhammer fantasy world and strong visual design in particular, which stood out against the more cartoony aesthetic of World of Warcraft. Because of this and the general hype, the early months saw over 800,000 players registering
Wait,
accounts
whoa, what are they diving
with more
for?
than 5
Sorry, I am listening to what he's saying, but they dove for something.
aesthetic of World of Warcraft. Because of this and the general hype, the early months saw over
I can't tell. I can't-
800,000 players
what the
registering
hell?
accounts, with more than 500,000 subscriptions by the end of 2008, a respectable figure for a new MMO in a post-WoW landscape. They would not hold these figures for long, however, as their main hook, RVR, continued to face issues post-launch. Balancing the two factions proved to be quite difficult, and one would commonly significantly outnumber the other, leaving the undermanned demoralized by their constant defeats. On some servers, this imbalance was so severe that it caused mass exodus.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, as well, about open world large scale PvP, because it's not like a queue, right? Like it's not like what's a good example? It's not like matchmaking in like other PvP modes like Battlegrounds, right? You know definitively in Battlegrounds and World of Warcraft like how many players are going to be in this match. As a numbers game, you can't overpower each other. That's controlled to make it more fair, to make it more manageable. But with open world PvP, that is something that needs to be acknowledged as one of the big risks. And when you have factions, when you have like hordes that band together, it's a big risk. It's a big because all it takes is just a sect of players on one side to just say, okay, we're tired, we're not going to play anymore, or we're fatigued, and we're not going to play. So now the scales have now been tipped, and now one side has more players, even if it's just marginal, and then they're going to start pounding hard against the other force, and then more, that's just going to cause a domino effect where more and more people are going to get fatigued because they're losing and they're losing and they're losing and they're losing and they're losing, and eventually it's going to come down to only like 10 to 15 play. Obviously, this is a huge exaggeration, but let's say like just 10 to 15 players are left even trying on one side just because they're stubborn, while the other side has hundreds of players that because they're winning, they're hyped, their morale's up, and they're going to keep pushing. That's one argument for why open world, large scale PvP MMOs are kind of doomed to fail. That is an argument I think is fair. Yeah, because that like how do you handle that? How do you manage that fatigue and that balancing? Like there's really no way to do it. Like in matchmaking based PvP modes and MMOs and stuff like that, that's easily managed. It's like okay, it's a queue, it's 6v6, it's 3v3, it's 4v4. Or even if it's larger scale, let's say it's 60v60, there's still at least a set number of v, like what v number. So and then it's all queued up, the numbers are balanced out, and if they're not balanced, the game doesn't launch the mode yet. It waits for players to queue. That allows that fatigue to not set in, and also because it's a mode, it's more finite amount of time in like a battlegrounds, for example. Whereas like in open world PvP, you could be doing like army v army for what 10 minutes, or you could do it for like 6 hours as you're trying to like slam into each other. It's like it is a big question of how in the hell do you balance that, and how in the hell do you combat that fatigue when all it takes is one side to start kind of like crumbling, and then it's just going to be overpowered. So it's I'll tell you this, I have no idea how to approach that issue, and I don't think I would say if I'm going to be a little bold here, I would say there might not be a way to approach it. So that I think that is what might be a fair argument for why open world, large scale PvP, MMO RPGs in particular are kind of doomed to fail.
This is of players further exacerbating the population issues and leading to frequent complaints about uneven battles as Mythic struggle to address it in meaningful ways.
Well,
as for city sieges, they would prove to be one of the most technically challenging aspects of the game, as the performance issues weren't addressed.
Is that a brand new Sigismund model?
The large number of players involved still led to significant server lag and performance issues, especially during peak hours. The technical limitations of the game's engine struggled to handle the sheer scale of these battles, and many players found themselves frustrated by input lag, crashes, disconnects, and so on. Mythic would work hard to patch and optimize the game post-launch, but these performance issues persisted for much of the game's lifespan. The endgame content, as expected, heavily favored PvP players. Unlike World of Warcraft, which offered a mix of raid content and PvP, Warhammer's endgame revolved almost entirely around city sieges and large-scale RVR battles, and while this was appealing to the more hardcore PvP audience, it also had the side effect of alienating a significant portion of the player base who were more interested in the traditional PvE endgame activities, such as raiding and high-level dungeons. This would create a divide between the player base, with those who preferred PvE content failing to find the kind of polished raiding experience that World of Warcraft offered. Another significant factor contributing to its decline was its lack of consistent and substantial content updates. This was caused largely by the game's rushed launch, as initial patches were primarily focused on addressing the numerous technical issues, which was crucial and necessary, but it also left little room for new content. And while some updates and new content were eventually introduced, they were often too little too late. Yeah. For example, the Call to Arms expansion, which was released in June of 2009, nearly a year later, added a new high-level zone with PvE and PvP elements, and although it was well received by those remaining, at that point, many players had already left the game for greener pastures. The comparisons to WoW were an ever-present elephant in the room. During this period of stagnation post-launch, WoW continued to dominate the MMORPG space.
I mean, I'm certainly guilty of comparing it to WoW throughout this reaction, but that is always gonna be a problem with any new MMORPG on the market. Ashes of the Creation isn't even out yet, and that's being compared to WoW massively. It's been compared to WoW since it was like very first like mentioned. It's an inevitable thing there. I don't know. Yeah, like the pillars that I'm definitely seeing like why Warhammer Age of Reckoning fell. It's yeah. The big thing, I think the MMO would have lasted longer if it weren't for the technical issues, because they could have focused on making new content. But because they had so many technical issues and they had to fix that first, yeah, it definitely sounds that, and the PvP balance, the PvP fatigue that always ends up happening in these MMOs. Yeah, that's yeah, okay.
Base, regularly releasing expansions and content updates that kept players engaged. The Wrath of the Lich King expansion, which launched in November of 2008, that is a couple months after Warhammer, introduced a wealth of new content, including raids, dungeons, a new class, as well as a steady delivery of major content updates. It was clear, WoW's polish and content breadth was hard to match. By the end of 2008, it had already released 2 expansions, which added substantial new features and further solidified its dominance within the MMO market. And though World of Warcraft suffered similar issues to Warhammer at its launch, in 2004, it was released to a relatively niche market.
This is back
with
when
no
was actually likable too.
This was a leisure that Warhammer wasn't granted, as disappointed players had a sprawling and active and immensely popular giant awaiting their return.
Oh, management.
Tensions weren't high with just the player base, but also the development team, even leaking into the public eye. In 2010, an anonymous ex-employee of Mythic Entertainment, going by the pseudonym EA Laos, made waves by posting a scathing blog entry that leaked internal details about the development of Warhammer and criticized EA's handling of the project. The post offered a rare and unfiltered glimpse into the behind-the-scenes struggles at Mythic, and it painted a bleak picture of the game's troubled development, to say the least. According to the post, EA's acquisition of Mythic brought with it unrealistic deadlines, financial constraints, and corporate pressure that stifled the creativity and potential of the game, and went on to claim that EA were more concerned with rushing it out to the market rather than ensuring its
that explains the technical
success,
issues,
leading to the release of an obviously
I'm not shocked at all, though.
Product.
I will say
the leak
that
garnered significant attention within the community, particularly
I'm not
among
shocked.
those who were already aware of the game's shortcomings. Many saw it as a confirmation of their suspicions of the game's
publishers v success. Success 0. Publishers infinity symbol. Like, they always seem to fuck shit up. God damn it. I kind of want to go on a corporate, like, a rant about, like, corporate culture destroying video gaming, but I think you guys know exactly what I'd say, so...
troubled development, and it would become one of the most infamous and scathing leaks.
And there's a place for, like, business mentality with games, but it doesn't belong anywhere near development.
As in November of the same year, a glitch in their billing system severely impacted the game's already dwindling reputation. Players discovered that their credit and debit cards had been hit with multiple charges in rapid succession, instead of being billed for their usual monthly subscription fee, which was $15. Some players were charged for several months or even years of subscription fees all at once. In the most extreme cases, they found themselves being billed hundreds or even thousands of dollars in a single day. These unexpected charges caused their bank accounts to be severely overdrafted, leading to bounced payments and overdraft fees. The magnitude of this error varied by player, depending on how long they had been subscribed to the game, or God help them if they had multiple accounts. Once the issue was discovered, Mythic issued a public apology and began working to rectifying the situation.
And refunded, right?
But at this point, the damage had already been done, and the incident sparked outrage among players, many of whom were...
I'm concerned he's not mentioning the word refund. Okay, that I'll say this. That's as bad as Bethesda's fuck up with Fallout 76. No, sorry, that's worse. That's worse. Ordo Manos, welcome to stream. This is Mad Season Show, right here. Make sure you guys subscribe and leave a like. And in the video of this that'll get uploaded on the channel, I will be linking him in the description and in the description, and his channel will be linked in the description. And pinned comment is assuming that the settings work for that, because I've had issues with like I've tried to preset a pinned comment before clicking publish, and then the pinned comment disappears. That's happened a couple times. But anyway, but what the fuck? That is so bad. Charging years, if it is true. Is this not confirmed? Mad Season Show is talking about it like it's confirmed. And lots of people are reporting it. So I'd imagine if it was one or two trolls, people would have like figured it out really quickly. And if the studio actually tried to rectify it, that means that it is true, I'd imagine. Refunds consumer rights in the gaming industry. I know. Ha 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 ha. What the fuck?
Already disillusioned by the state of the game. For many,
Holy
this was
crap.
the final straw, and they canceled their subscriptions immediately after.
I mean, to be fair, that's a final straw no matter what the other circumstances, right? Like, if a game charged you, like, you agreed to a monthly subscription of, okay, per month you could take out $15 dues from my account. Only 15, though. And then out of nowhere, they charge you for 22 months worth, or like 12 months worth. Hell, even 7 months worth would piss me the fuck off, even if the game were perfect. They took the money right out. The billing thing was true. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. But it's like if you got charged like a shit ton out of nowhere, that like you wouldn't trust that at all. You'd be like, okay, yeah, they might refund me now, but the fact they did it at all, like that shakes your trust hard. You're like, okay, I'm not paying for this game if like out of nowhere it's gonna cost me $3,000. You know, like, people live on a budget all the time and barely make room for this stuff. So it's what the fuck. Like, even if, like, let's say like none of the other issues were happening, the hyper focus of PvP, the PvP attrition that was happening with a lot of people, the lack of updates, the technical issues, even if none of that was happening, this alone right here would cause a lot of people to drop out. Even if you weren't one of the people overcharged, right? If you heard about it, you're like, well, shit, I only got $400 in my bank account until my next paycheck. I'm barely living as it is. I can't afford to get randomly have my entire life ripped apart by a video game. Even people who weren't affected would bail. Like, this is not a small, like, this in and of itself knocks down the foundation. All the other things, this is Jesus.
Incident.
This is
The charges were all
holy fuck.
eventually reversed, but
Okay, good.
not before significant damage had been done to the game's decreasing reputation.
I was waiting
As
for that
the player
word of
base began
refund.
to decline,
Welcome,
the features that the
Trithart?
game staked everything on had begun to crumble. Public quests started to lose their appeal as they were designed to be tackled by groups of players, but as server populations dwindled, many of them would be impossible to complete. Without this critical mass of players within the area, the later stages of a player quest, particularly the boss fights, became impossible. But even more destructive was their crown jewel, RVR, which became smaller and smaller and even more imbalanced as outnumbered factions became frustrated and threw in the towel. Contrary to the game's slogan, war was not indeed everywhere.
Oof. Yeah, yeah, I agree, Ordo Manos. Yeah. Or Manus. I apologize if I'm saying your name correctly.
The initial success of Warhammer Online was
Wow.
short-lived. While it launched with a sizable player base,
How did I
due to
never
these
hear about
issues,
that?
They began to decline quite rapidly within the first few months, and by early 2009,
I feel like I would
reports
have heard about it.
indicated
I was
that the
very
player
active
base
in
had
Warhammer
shrunk to
forums.
around
Sorry,
300,000.
well, yeah, Warhammer
and
at the
by
time,
the end of
yeah.
that year, the number had dwindled even further, even lower than that of their
Warhammer and
previous
Warcraft
MMO,
forums.
the Dark Age of Camelot.
I should have heard about
As
that.
its
debacle. I
population
don't remember that
continued
at
to
all.
decline, the imbalance between order and destruction became even more problematic, and as there were now very few newcomers, even with added incentives for outnumbered factions such as increased experience and renown gain, there was little hope for a solution. It wasn't long until Mythic was forced to merge servers in an attempt to consolidate the remaining population and create a healthier environment for RVR battles and such. But alas, the move was seen by many to be just another sign of the game dying. EA, at this point, had begun to play an even more significant role in shaping its trajectory, and as history would show, in the wrong direction. Much like any MMO, the development of Warhammer had been quite costly, and EA expected a return on their investment in the form of strong subscription numbers and sustained revenue. So as the player base began to decline, their willingness to continue investing into the game diminished, and therefore their power over the developers increased. The dev team was gradually downsized since it wasn't making enough money, and of course with fewer developers, that meant fewer updates and expansions. And despite their best efforts to reinvigorate it with patches and new features, it became clear that Warhammer was no longer a priority for EA. The even slower pace of updates frustrated even the most diehard fans. And
yeah, there
by
was
2013, EA made the decision to shut down the game entirely.
There was also
and
going
on
to be a
December
40k
18th,
MMORPG,
their
but
servers were permanently closed, bringing an end to the game's tumultuous
that never made it
five-year
past the
run.
conception stage.
After the dust had settled, like many other abandoned MMOs, the Phoenix arose from the ashes in the form of emulated servers. The game's most hardcore community refused to let it fade into obscurity, and in the years that followed, a group of passionate players and developers launched private servers to keep it alive at all costs.
I've been playing
in of these efforts is
we've been playing
Return
in
of Reckoning,
today,
which has been running since 2014. They would reverse engineer the game's code, and they rebuilt the server infrastructure to allow players to experience it once again, maintaining much of the game's original content, but also introducing new features and balance changes to address some of the issues that had plagued the official release.
That seems to be a trend. It really does, doesn't it? And I will say, so far, Return of Reckoning has been actually quite enjoyable. Granted, I was still on my first character in the very, very early levels, but it feels definitely like it's harkening to I would argue a better time in MMO history. Man, but I did not. Yeah, I swear I should have heard about that the refund thing, like the overcharges. Because I was active in the Warhammer and Warcraft forums. Well, not Warhammer Online specifically, but Warcraft-related forums and online chat features. I feel like I would have heard about that, but no, I don't recall ever hearing about people getting charged like crazy out of nowhere for Warhammer Online. It's so weird. I heard of Warhammer Online. I heard about like the PvP stuff. Granted, I never played it until last week, but damn, I did not know about that. That should be on the list, the short list of one of the most legendary fuck ups ever. Wow. And by all accounts, it's a small fuck up in regards to what it takes to do the fuck up, but it's a fuck up you cannot recover from.
Successful in sustaining a large player base. Its influence in the genre is hard to overstate. Several of its core mechanics, particularly the public quest system, Tome of Knowledge, and also RVR warfare, left a lasting impact on the genre, and they were adopted by other games in various forms, such as achievements in WoW, fates in Final Fantasy XIV, or dynamic events in Guild Wars 2, to name just a few.
Hey, FF14 fates, like
Online
I said,
adopted a similar large-scale faction-based PvP system, where players could fight for control of territory. And in general, this idea of territory control, where battles have a lasting impact within the game world, became a staple of many MMOs and online multiplayer games in the years following its release. It was a game built on bold ideas, to say the least, and if only for a while, it seemed like it might become a major contender within the genre and offering a unique alternative to World of Warcraft. Looking back, Warhammer Online represents both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration for MMO developers. It serves as a reminder of the importance of balancing ambition with practicality, and for those who experience the highs and lows of the game, it'll always hold a special place in the history of online gaming. An interesting experiment that, while flawed, paved the way for future innovations within the genre. And it seems that the story of Warhammer within the MMO world is not over, as in 2023, a developer named Jackalyptic Games announced the development of an upcoming
I did
Warhammer
hear about
MMO.
that. I'll talk about that in
Not
a
much
second.
else is really known at this moment in time.
I'll tell you this. I don't have any faith in that project. Not necessarily because like I don't know anything about Jackalyptic Games, but I don't trust modern MMOs, like pretty much period. I just don't.
But past and
I'll
new
elaborate
fans
more.
alike are currently awaiting in eager anticipation for details on a possible redemption. As the MMO landscape continues to evolve, Warhammer Online's legacy endures as a symbol of both the challenges and the potential of large-scale faction-based warfare in online games. The lessons learned from its development, rise, and decline will undoubtedly continue to shape the future of the genre for
And
years
my
to
worry
come.
is they're gonna learn
Thanks
the
for
wrong
watching
things.
my video. This is a possible new series if you guys enjoyed it. The idea is to go over other MMOs or video games that have been shut down
Oh yeah, Conan
and
had
covering their
MMO.
development, rise and fall in a historical and analytical way. I'm sure there's room for improvement, so let me know if you have any suggestions.
I only have
or
one.
If you have a game that
Everything
you'd like
else
to
is
see
perfect,
covered.
Mad Season,
And
but I only
aside
have
from
one.
that, don't forget to like the video if you liked it, because I'll see you in the
I already
next
liked
one.
it,
Peace.
and all y'all should like it too. Yeah, my only like thing I would urge Mad Season to do for these videos or this series, maybe tone down the background music volume just a little bit. It's not completely overpowering you. I mean, a couple times it kind of did, but it's just a little too loud. You're, no offense, man, but you're a little bit of a monotone, even keeled speaker. You're one toned throughout most of it. So it especially doesn't work with you to have a very loud music. It's loud is probably the wrong word, but it's loud enough that at times it was certainly taking me away from what you were saying almost. So just like a couple more decibels down, and you. Otherwise, beautiful. Lovely video. And for those who watched the upload of the video of this reaction from the stream I'm currently doing, make sure you check the description and the pinned comment for the links to both Mad Season Show's video, the Rise and Fall of Warhammer Online, and a link to his channel as a whole. Check out his content, support the original creators of any reaction you may watch, all that fun stuff. And yeah, I I did not know any of that for the most part. I mean, I knew about the PvP. I knew the broad strokes of Warhammer Online, but I'm this definitely cured my my curiosity about like why it fell. Yeah, it seems like it had a couple things. It just had like the worst storm of things. Other things, it was definitely incompetence, like rushing it out from EA. EA seems to be behind a lot of deaths of games and studios. Shocker. Damn. But you know, and to kind of bring up something before I end the video portion of this, where I'm still going to keep streaming, don't worry. But before I end the recording of this, I do want to like bring up one thing that was mentioned earlier, is the trend we're seeing with a lot of old school MMOs that fell or were closed down getting private servers. Because that has been the trend for at least a little while. Because it happened to City of Heroes. Actually, if you really want to like analyze it, it happened with Vanilla WoW and TBC and Wrath all getting private servers themselves, like Nestarius and stuff. Like that game wasn't, WoW wasn't even dead, but they were bringing back to life its heyday. And then you also have private servers that are still currently going for City of Heroes, which that MMO was so fucking amazing and never should have died. You know, with Homecoming, and then you have Return of Reckoning for the private service for Warhammer that we're playing right now. You have all like so many of these communities that were hardcore behind these games miss them so much, and it's so telling that in the market right now that they have such a lack of options that people are are going to the effort, because this takes time, this takes money, this takes a lot of spare time on people's parts, and a lot of these private servers are free. Like, they don't even ask for donations or anything to like maintain server fees or anything. That takes a lot of dedication. That's how awesome these MMOs and these communities and these games were back in the day, and that's how hungry people are for those experiences again, that they're willing to go to the extent of bringing these games back from the dead, because there's just nothing filling that void. World of Warcraft isn't even filling the void of its own prior expansions. It's nuts, man. And it's kind of sad. And like I said before, I don't have a lot of faith in the upcoming MMO for Warhammer. The new Warhammer Online, I guess, is what we'll call it for now. I just don't have any faith in it. Like, I don't have faith in modern game development for the most part, and especially on the MMO side, because I'm thinking of like, hey, what's like the latest MMOs I could think of that have come out, and technically one amongst that list is you got Throne and Liberty, which is very much a pay to win game. That's why, and I for a while I was pretty forgiving of that system because it was free to play, but eventually I burnt out on it before I even made max level. Outside of Throne and Liberty, you got a bunch of other like Korean style MMOs. Really, when it comes to like Western MMOs, we're not really getting anything lately, and honestly, I don't think they're, monetization wise, I don't think they're gonna be any better. The Diablo clone one, can't even remember the names. Yeah, exactly. Like Havoc, like nothing is memorable or iconic or as impressing upon as what we grew up with, like what we had back in the heyday of MMOs. Like, I can't think of anything that is as good nowadays as, Warhammer Online, even so far, or Star Wars Galaxies, or SWTOR in its original vanilla launch, or I guess patch 3.0 was pretty good. But like, you looking back, the only good Western MMOs right now that are on the market are pretty much private servers. Like, I wouldn't describe World of Warcraft as a good MMO in its current state, personally, if you compare it to the heyday. I guess compared to its contemporaries right now, WoW is, I guess, the best option. But I don't know, you put it up against the heyday in its current state, and it's just lacking in so many ways. A SWTOR right now is lacking in so many ways from the heyday as well, because it's such an easy MMO. Like, it's not even an MMO really. It's just it's a single player RPG where you occasionally run into people. Honestly, it's just I can't think of any reason to have confidence in upcoming MMOs. I mean, who knows? Maybe this game from Jackalyptic Games will be like the Space Marine 2 of MMORPGs, where it's harkening back to the heyday of things. They'll ask us for an upfront cost of the game for like $60 and say, hey, we also have a monthly subscription to maintain the game. And then that's it. Like, there's no cosmetic in-game shop, not even that. There's no in-game purchases. They're like, that's all we ask from you, and we're gonna give you an experience that has like the graphic fidelity and the systems that we can get away with now with Jack and Charge. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm saying maybe, and I'm gonna give them that maybe with a huge lint towards highly unlikely. But I just don't see it happening. Like, as much as I'm like the most optimistic end of my brain wants that, I just don't see that happening. But yeah, this is the end of the video recording of this reaction. Thank you guys so much for watching on the YouTube front. Hope you guys enjoy this. And please, if you would like to join the streams that I do, by the way, my stream audience, I'm not ending the stream yet, but for the recording, I'm ending it. If you're watching the YouTube video of this, again, check out Mad Season Show, link to the description in the pinned comment, both the video and his channel. Make sure to leave a support. Make sure to leave a huge thumbs up and subscribe. Do all that fun stuff for him. And if you feel so inclined, make sure to subscribe to Asmogan over here, and also leave a like on this reaction. And I will see you guys next time on the video front. And if you guys are interested in coming on to my live streams, I take reaction requests as I stream. You don't have to super chat or anything. You can just throw one out in the chat, and if I see it, I'll be happy to check out some videos you might recommend. And yeah, I stream 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays between the hours of 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Outside of all that information, I'll catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.